Masad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society Podcast. We're recording this on Monday, October the 23rd, 2023. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse, and on tonight's show, we talk with Sarah Albrect about the organization she co-founded, Hold My Guns.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about Jews in the U.S. arming up after Hamas's attacks in Israel.
I'm Charlie Cook, and in one of our DGU stories, we'll talk about a carjacking gone wrong for the carjacker. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 680 of the Polite Society Podcast starts right now. All right, it's Monday night. It's just barely after 7 o'clock in the Central Time Zone, the only time zone that matters. And time for another episode of the Polite Society Podcast. Rob, as I usually do, I'm going to start with you. What's been up with you since the last time you've been on Polite Society, man?
I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load radio show. I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories. A little unusual, I was on Ben Branham's podcast, Modern Self-Protection. We ran sort of an after-action report on the attacks in Israel. What can we learn? I also sent my gun to ATEI in Michigan for a new barrel and trigger. I didn't know how much of a thing ATEI was, so I'm learning. John, how about you?
Well, it's been kind of a quiet week for me. The mountains are starting to show their fall colors, and I really got to get going and find a new place to hunt. I did bore-sighted rifle this week. It was a Savage Axis 223. I had an older Bushnell sight that I scavenged to put on this, and now I need to find a range to take it to for confirmation. Charlie?
I had a class this weekend with a mix of 3 men and 4 women, all of various ages, from a new 21-year-old to someone that was in their mid 60s. I think I wrote an open letter to the state speaker Mariano, and I don't think I talked about it last week. I think it was afterwards that I wrote that, or I sent that out. And this past weekend, somebody organized this event as a sort of a fundraiser for this nonsense bill that we've had here in Massachusetts, and he was doing a poker run. So what I did with one of my buddies is we drove to 5 different gun stores and bought ammo, and we picked up these little tickets, and then we went to a sportsman's club, one of the local sportsman's club, and they had a raffle. So that was pretty fun. It gave us something to do, get out of the house. And I think that's all that I had going on. My buddy did win a 1-year membership to Cape Gun Works, which is pretty cool. It's 2 hours away, so I don't know how often he's going to use it, but that's what's been happening with me. Paul, what's been going on with you?
Well, I got to say, today I got to do something I don't get to do nearly often enough, and I absolutely love doing. I got to go riding motorcycle with my sweetheart. It's as we speak right now. We got back maybe an hour and a half ago. As I speak right now, let me pull a temperature up on the computer. It is 63 degrees. It was almost 70 when we were out riding. You'll notice a little bit of the show is not as prepared as it usually is, but I traded 2 hours of show prep for going out for 2 hours on the motorcycle with Susan, and had an absolutely wonderful time. I have to think this may be one of the last times we get to do it this year. I don't see many 70-degree days coming up in the future, but it could happen. So not much to do with guns for me this week. I'm on the lookout. Believe it or not, there's not just an ammo shortage. There's a shortage on magazines for Glock 43s in my local area. I may end up going to the internet and ordering some from who knows where. But went to some local shops and tried to find spare mags for a Glock 43, and they're just as scarce as 9mm ammo is around here right now. So that's about all I've been doing in guns. I do want to mention before we start going to break, I want to bring up this. Oops, that's the logo. Where is my button for the browser? There it is. I do want to mention the Self-Defense Radio Network. We're a proud founding member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. And as you can see, if I can hit the right area perfectly with my mouse and start scrolling down. Nope, that ain't it. Well, as you can see, I hope you can see, there's about 12 members of the network. And there we go. And I still can't scroll down far enough for you to get them all. There's about 12 members of the network. Riding Shotgun with Charlie is up there. Eye on the Target Radio. Of course, Self-Defense Gun Stories, Gun Freedom Radio, a lot of other shows up there. You can listen right off the website, or if you want to, the subscription information is there as well. Go check it out at sdrn.us or selfdefenseradio.net. We're going to take a break. Sarah Albrect of Hold My Guns is patiently waiting for us to get to her. We will interview her when we come back right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right, we are back. This is the interview segment of the Polite Society podcast. Joining us tonight, Sarah Albrect. Sarah, if I hope I did this right. I'm doing this off memory from when we met at GRPC and AmCon about a month ago. You are the co-founder, if I'm right, of Hold My Guns. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, I founded Hold My Guns along with Genevieve Jones, and she's a wonderful member of the firearms community. She's been a friend for a very long time. And for a while, she was at the Gun Collective, and now she is with Black Belt Ammo. So please go check out their offerings, especially since we're all looking for ammo, and theirs is just really phenomenal. So check it out.
All right. So
must be nice to have a friend who's in an ammo company. I'll talk to you later.
Nice.
Yeah, if they're looking for promotional opportunities, I'm sure there's a couple places we know where they could avail themselves.
I will pass that along. I'll pass it along. And Rob, it's never a better time to start reloading too. So there's that as well.
All right. Sarah, the reason I wanted you to come along tonight, the reason I wanted to interview was Hold My Guns. I hear about it all the time, but this is the first time I've had a chance to interview you on the air. If you could you give us the very quick elevator pitch about what Hold My Guns is?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And thanks for having me on the podcast tonight. So Hold My Guns is a 501c3 nonprofit from within the firearms community. And what we do is partner with FFLs and provide voluntary firearm storage during times of personal need. And that personal need can be anything from someone who is selling their home and they don't want to have firearms in their hotel room or in their moving truck, to having a foster child in the home where there can't be access to firearms. Right, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and it's important to note that people who are seeking shelter cannot take their firearms into a shelter. So we can help out there, and it's also something that can help if there's a mental health crisis in the home, and the gun owner wants to make sure that the household members don't have access to firearms during that time. So people use this service for a wide variety of reasons, and the FFL partners do not ask why the individual is storing firearms, but the goal is to have this service so that we can promote self-governance and to empower gun owners to make life-affirming choices and to have the resources to be able to take care of their property. And what we say is that our work helps to save lives, protect property, and preserve rights.
So how long has Hold My Guns been around? I've been hearing about it for a little bit, but how long have you guys been around?
Well, I started it in 2018 is when the idea came to me, because we lost a young friend to suicide by firearm. And so the idea started in 2018, but we became an official nonprofit in 2020. We actually found out about that at SHOT Show. Our attorney, Joshua Prince, sent me a text and said, "Hey, Sarah, you guys are official." So it was really cool to get that at SHOT Show. We were in the press room at the time. So that was really, it was just kind of fun. But since then, we've grown to 8 storage locations. We had a 9th at one point, but they were hit by a tornado. And so that was an interesting situation. But 8 states currently. And recently, one of our storage partners stored over 40 firearms. And it just is a really cool thing that we are helping gun owners in need to offer this storage. So I would love to see, our goal is to be in all 50 states. And if people want to learn more about how to make that possible, check out holdmyguns.org.
All right, and that's one thing I hadn't even thought of is if you were in the process of. I mean, the immediate thought is if I'm having issues and I think I may be better off without my firearms around me. I'd never even thought about moving, or if your house is hit by a flood or a tornado or other natural disaster. Another great resource. It's taken you just a couple years to get up to 9, now back down to 8, and you want to be up to all 50 states. Where do you have a timeline? Well, I'm cheating because I read your prospectus that I got from you when we were at Gun Rights Policy Conference. How soon would you hope to be able to get into all 50 states?
Well, our hope was to have 36 states this year. I don't think we're going to make that goal. And one of our biggest obstacles is fundraising. You might notice that there are some organizations out there that have gun maps that are cropping up, and I really appreciate their work. What they're doing is calling different gun shops and saying, "Hey, will you store firearms?" And if they say yes, then they end up on a map that is, part of maybe a university study or some kind of state initiative. Those are funded by millions of dollars of grant money, and I really, again, appreciate the work that they're doing and that they have gun shops who are interested in working with them. But what we're doing is a little bit different. We started this a couple years back. It's taken a little while to go. And that's because, again, we're dealing with grassroots efforts here. And we're really super thankful for Nate, who donates $5 each month. But what we're looking for is some sponsors that can really be heroes, because this is an opportunity to take leadership and make this service available to support our community. And, as I mentioned, there's many, many different uses. A lot of the other efforts out there for firearm storage really focuses on suicide prevention. And, that is one of the reasons why we started Hold My Guns. But we really care we don't want to pigeonhole it to just that, because the reality is, if people are saying, "Oh, I'm storing this because it's for suicide prevention. It's part of this suicide prevention project or study that this university's doing for a research project, then what that does is it labels anyone who's storing a firearm as being at risk for suicide. And we know that that's certainly not the case with the customers who are storing through Hold My Guns. So the other thing is that, again, by our community supporting these efforts, it is making sure that we preserve rights. And I don't know if you got to see, but we are just in the Epic Times again, the third time in a row, because we called attention to the fact that the Washington state assault weapons ban actually keeps people from being able to store firearms. So people should know that, I really appreciate that it's taken a moment to learn about Hold My Guns and to make sure that we're trustworthy people truly from the firearms community. We're not gun grabbers in disguise. And now that we've been around for a little while, my ask of people is to say, look, we can see that Hold My Guns is helping to preserve rights. They're a valuable asset in the firearms community. We want for them to be around, and we want for them to be able to grow to all 50 states. And, one of the hardest things for me is when I get a call from someone who desperately needs storage and we don't have a partner near them. So if anyone out there is listening, you can go to holdmyguns.org, or you can go to our social media, holdmyguns.org, and there's a link tree there where you can donate, you can become a sponsor, you can sign up as a FFL partner, or even to become a volunteer. So there's many ways to get involved and to support our firearms community in this liberty-based effort.
All right, I'm going to put up, and there it is. There is the website right there, Hold My Guns. That's actually the locations. And you are spread widely throughout the country. You've got a couple locations, looks like up in the Northeast, one that's almost southeast, couple in the central United States, and then some out west. It looks like you're doing a good job of, as you're starting, you're spreading out over the country. You're not just in one location.
Exactly. We do hopefully have a new 9th location coming up soon in Pennsylvania here, and we're hoping to announce that soon. We're really excited about that. But yes, we're spread out. And, something we were talking about a little bit before we got started here is one of the important things is that we have to make sure that our contracts for storage are compliant. So we are looking for attorneys who are licensed in different states of operation who'd be willing to help us to create those storage contracts. And what that does is it helps to reduce liability to the storage partner. We're working with federal firearms licensees, so we have to make sure that everything is above board and compliant. We use a consignment return type process, and that's something that we were directed to from our attorney and from the ATF. So, we want to make sure that everything is above board there. But I also have to say, in addition to storing complete firearms, we can also store non-serialized critical parts like a barrel or a firing pin, and we can also store an accessory such as a key to a gun lock. So there are many different options that people have depending on their needs, and our goal is to grow.
I want to get a comment in here that I'm going to hand, because I know Rob and John and Charlie are all itching to ask questions. I want to get a comment in here real quick. And by the way, if you want to ask Sarah a question, comment on the live YouTube or Facebook videos, and we'll get those comments almost immediately. We'll get them up, and we'll ask Sarah for you. But the first one I got, Sarah, is from Warsaw Patriot. Oops, that didn't go through. Give me a second here. That's from last week, and yeah, I don't want to know where Charlie's storing the gun either.
Oh!
All right,
these are my friends.
Let me try
Charlie,
this
I'm so
one more
glad
time.
you have friends this week. Last week it didn't sound like
it did not so much, right?
All right. Question from Warsaw Patriots. Sarah, in Illinois, we could use your help with the Illinois assault weapons ban. Citizens don't want to be forced to register their firearms to the state. Think your organization could help citizens temporarily help hold their arms? I was looking, and I'm looking over now. There's not a location in Illinois. However, if they could drive, I imagine there's a lot of places that'd be willing to help for that.
I think so too, and something to consider in that situation too. And we have to be careful. Again, this is why we really want to work with attorneys who are well versed in gun rights, and they understand things like gun registries and such that some states have. And so I would encourage people to, in that situation, be very aware of your state and local laws. And I would encourage you to check out maybe a locker service. They work a little bit different than custodial storage. And we can work with locker storages as long as they are attached to an FFL in case a transfer has to happen at some point. But the cool thing about using a locker service is that you're essentially renting that space just like you would with a storage bin. And no one at the FFL is touching the items that are in there. So they're not having to put them in an acquisition disposition logbook or anything like that. They're just kept there and the customer keeps the key. So keep it in mind for something like that where you have a concern if, if there's a ban in place that you're hoping will be overturned and you don't want to lose your property, you don't want to register. There truly are ways that that you can work with that are legal. So check it out. I would also recommend contacting a firearms attorney near you and just asking about the situation and finding out what you can do. I know some people even use gun trusts for situations like this. If another person in the trust who maybe is in a state where it's lawful to have those firearms is willing to take possession of them, that might be another way to help the situation. But it is so important that we always keep in focus, regardless of why people are storing firearms, right? Or whatever our topic is, we always must keep in focus the preservation of rights and be wise as serpents, innocent as doves. And I love that Hold My Guns has a part of that we can use this as an opportunity to always push back and say, all right, well, if these are in place, if there's an assault weapons ban in place, but you also want to promote safe storage, how are you going to do that? If you have to register firearms, if these items are illegal. So it is a fun way that we can push back and kind of call out some of the rhetoric that we hear.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open this up to my staff here. Rob, John, Charlie, you have any questions you want to bring forward?
Yeah, I certainly do. Sarah, since I can't bring you to my local gun shop unless you're down in Southwest Louisiana in the next couple of days, do you have a brochure I can print that sort of explains Hold My Guns? And I was thinking of some gun trust attorneys that I should send that to. So maybe I need a PDF. Where would I find it?
All right. So this is our brochure right here, and it explains what we do. There's some great pictures in there and some great quotes as well, and our mission statement on the back. And you can find that in the link tree in our bio, which is holdmyguns.org on Facebook, on Instagram, on Telegram, and Twitter. We're also on LinkedIn as well. So if you check out that link in the bio, you can download a brochure, and we have one that is specifically for print. So if you plan on doing that, you might want to put it like on a memory stick or something, just because it's a larger file to get good, clear printing.
All right.
Sarah, do
Guys, talk.
people who make
through your website.
Okay. Do people have to go through NICS check to pick up or reclaim their own guns?
They do. If they're using the service as a custodial storage service, they do. And that's an ATF directive. It came out, it's something that we have been doing since we started in 2020, offering this storage service, because we were using like a consignment return process. And that was given to our attorney by the ATF way back in 2020. So, we do use that process. You don't if you're going to be storing a non-serialized critical part or an accessory. So keep that in mind, unless it's an NFA item, and that's a whole different can of worms there. But it is important to note that the firearm owner is still the owner of the firearm, and in a custodial storage arrangement, that the gun shop has temporary possession of that firearm. So it is something that, because it's involving that transfer, you do have to go through a NICS check. In the contract, the customer is stating that they are not a prohibited person, and then they go ahead and fill out the 4473, which has I think it's called like the revised firearm transfer form or something like that. Now they just changed the name. and they're attesting that they're not prohibited. And what that does is it reduces liability to the gun shop. And it is a tough thing because, again, we want to make sure that we preserve rights. And I have personal opinions about that. But it is in this climate right now, just like if you were to purchase a firearm, it is something that you do have to go through. So yes. And again, if you want to avoid that, consider doing a locker service. And we do partner with locker services provided that they're attached to an FFL.
So in other words, it works just as if you took it into a pawn shop without getting money in exchange. You pawn
Yes,
something,
it's similar
you
to
pay
that.
them off, you get it back. Yeah.
Yes.
And so it does.
So we're not
into,
reinventing the wheel.
Yeah. And so it does go into the dealer's acquisition and disposition book, the bound book.
Correct. Yes. And we do have a important wording in our contract. Again, Joshua Prince is a tremendous attorney and he values privacy just like I do. And so we have it in the contract that if there is ever a court order, and it is a very narrow situation where someone would actually have a court order, that the information that's in the bound book would be sealed. And that is part of our contract. So again, it's just the customer's contact information, make, model, serial number, but that is part of the contract that we request that it would be sealed in the event of a court order.
All right, Sarah, we are down at the bottom of the hour. I've got to run to break. Can you hang out for one more segment with us?
I sure can. Thank you.
All right, we will be right back. More with Sarah Albrect of Hold My Guns right after we hear from the Complete Combatant. We'll be right back right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
All right, we are back, and as we get going for this final segment with Sarah Albrect of Hold My Guns, Charlie, you had a couple questions you had up in show notes. I'm going to throw to you, man. What you got?
Yeah, I want to say that in occupied territory states like I live in, we have an approved weapons roster. So there are some things that if we own it and we turn it into a dealer, we might not be able to get back. So I think that having places that'll even just store your keys, I think that is a fabulous idea. So that's great. And like you said, you don't have to go through, like John was saying, asking about going through a 4473 and a background check. You don't have to do that if they don't have the guns, if they just have the keys, so you don't have access to them. That's a great idea.
Exactly. Or if you're going to be on vacation or something and your teenagers are throwing a house party or something like that, there's so many different reasons why people use the firearms or want to use the storage for firearms. So, even if you're locking them up and you know that the key's not at home for somebody to get into, it's just something that creates a pause. And I want to say, like, I know a lot of people talk a lot about gun locks, and I just encourage people, a gun lock can be defeated. It's not too hard to defeat a cable lock. It's good to have a plan other than that, but to cause a pause or a good deterrent, being able to store that key at a Hold My Guns partner certainly is a great option for a lot of people.
One question I have, is there a charge for a person who needs this service? Is there a charge for them, or is that varied location by location?
We let the location to set the price, and it's a market price, but we encourage them to keep it low. So I know some of our storage partners charge like $10 for the first firearm and then maybe $5 for additional. And we the reason why we charge that storage fee is so that it actually creates a good legal contract between the FFL and the customer. So they have proof that they have a contract. Again, we're talking about, helping to store people's investments. So we want to make sure that people have a good legal binding agreement. And the other thing is that, a lot of folks say, well, if a person's in crisis, why would you charge them? And what we don't want to do is single out to say, oh, well, if you're suicidal, then we're not going to charge you. But if you're going on vacation with your family, then you will. And the reason for that is because we don't ask why people are storing firearms. So it helps to maintain a little bit of anonymity as well, and just to make it fair. But, one of the cool things that we're working on doing is to create a scholarship, and we're looking to name that scholarship after our hero. So if anyone's interested in learning more about that, check out the sponsorship prospectus. And what that scholarship will go towards is, if someone is in need, they can just say, hey, I can't afford storage this month. I want to take it from the scholarship. And those funds would be available without having to disclose why. But our goal is to help our community to be able to afford this and to make it accessible.
Warsaw Patriot makes a good point. I'm not going to put the comment up on the screen because I can synopsize it very well. And speaking of, there was an issue with Fortress safes recently where a 12-year-old was able to get into a safe, and unfortunately there was a tragedy after the child got access to the firearm. If you're not certain of your safe, another reason to maybe, until you can get a reliable safe, I don't know that I would want to keep my stuff in a Fortress safe right now. Go ahead and put it in get somebody to hold it for you. Go to an FFL, have them hold your guns. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I think it's so important to, just remember cases like DC versus Heller. And, we have a right to, as gun owners, to have readiness and to have access to our firearms. So I just encourage people to take a personal account of what's going on in your home and who's in your home and what kind of access they might have to your firearms, and to make an informed decision about what kind of locking devices or where you're keeping your firearms stored and all of those things. I encourage gun owners to be responsible. But I just wanted to underscore, we do have a right to bear arms, and we have a right to choose how we do that. And so it is very important that we have services like Hold My Gun so that people have options, including offsite storage, as opposed to a legislative approach that criminalizes people simply for having access to their firearms in their own home. So we always want to be careful to keep in mind, having options and non-legislative approaches that don't criminalize people, while at the same time holding people accountable for actual crimes with firearms.
Sarah, I've been dying to ask this. Oh, I'm sorry, John. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to follow up on something Sarah said earlier. You were mentioning people storing guns with you if they're going on vacation, because whatever. Are there time limits? Say, for example, someone is in the military and they're being posted overseas for a year. Would that work? Overseas where they could not take their own personal firearms with them?
Absolutely, it would work. And again, our goal is to support our own community. And so when the customer comes in, if they say, hey, we need storage for a year, then the contract can be adjusted for that. Some people, we actually do have some people who have extended business trips who store firearms with us, and they let us know that because it's on the contract, that we're not saying, why are you storing firearms for that long? But they're like, hey, I'm going to be away for a year. I'll make an option to prepay it, or they make an arrangement. We are kind of a referral service, and we leave that part of the contract up to the FFL to customize it for their customers. But I also know that there are customers that are just like, hey, I am moving out of my house on this day. I'm going to be settling on it next week. I don't want it to be in the hotel room, so I only need it for like a few days here. And they can customize a contract for that too. So it is customizable. It's the template is for a month for storage, but it really is based on the customer's needs.
Perfect.
All right, Rob, you had a question you were going to go with.
Oh, of course. Without throwing mother-in-law and brothers-in-law under the bus, what are some of the more interesting questions people have brought you, Sarah?
More interesting questions. I'm assuming about Hold My Guns because
no,
there's a lot of really interesting questions that my mother-in-law could ask about me.
No. I'm trying to avoid those. Let's stay away from those. I just meant about Hold My Guns.
I'm
like
teasing, Rob.
My dog ate the house, and now I need to find a place to put it or something.
I think there was an interesting one where, and again, we don't ask why, but someone had shared that they inherited a firearm and they had a spouse who was not yet warmed up to the idea of having this particular firearm in the home. And so they thought it was best to have it stored at one of our storage partners until they could have a better discussion about firearm safety in the home. And if I recall, there were young children in the home, and it was kind of a new thing to have firearms. And so instead of fighting about it, they just said, all right, well, let's store the firearm. Let's figure out our game plan as a family and what safety, mechanisms do we need in place for having young children. And so our storage partner was able to help in that way. So yeah, that was an interesting one, but I was really appreciative that, again, that they had that option and that they were able to work things out and then pick up their firearm when they had a good plan in place for their home.
That's just wonderfully responsible.
It facilitates that, right? Like, we can't just tell people, go be responsible, and then, not have something like this available because, we say that. And then it's like, okay, well, are you going to hang on to your friends' firearms? And a lot of people say, no way, I don't want to be responsible for that. So, or maybe, we take for granted that not everyone has friends or family who can help. And, even though we have a great firearms community, we all live far apart. So I know that, as well-intentioned everybody is, it's not always convenient to ask people, in our community for help in this way. But FFL's providing a professional service certainly does help out.
Gotcha.
I want to, if I could, I'm going to put this map back up again. I got a little bit larger version of that I was able to pull up. And it's really hard to see, but it does appear to me that you've got a partner just outside of Washington, D.C. How difficult was that? And that's certainly a major population area. How difficult was it for you to get compliant in that area and for an FFL in that area? How difficult was that to bring them on board?
Well, every state has its challenges. And just kind of looking at the map on the screen, I wasn't quite sure if you were looking at the one in Pennsylvania or the one in Massachusetts, but our Massachusetts partner is Casey Small Arms, and they're actually part of Yankee Hill Machine. So they are the official shop of Yankee Hill Machine. I'm assuming that's the one that you're talking about there. Let me know if you're talking about a different one, Paul. But that one was tricky. They had a firearms executive.
That is my map reading wasn't as well. It was a very small screen I look at on my broadcast screen. But yeah, there's one up in.
But Massachusetts, it's hard. Yeah.
Yes.
And so we have a specific contract that's Massachusetts compliant. And, again, if we have a contract in a state, the cool thing is that we've already done the heavy lifting. And now the goal is to really, I think the easiest way to expand is to expand in the states where we already have a contract. And interestingly enough, we do have a contract that is Louisiana compliant because that's where our other storage partner was that got hit by a tornado. So if you know of a Louisiana partner, we can help with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, Sarah, you are such a great resource for this kind of thing. What can somebody do if there is not any Hold My Gun partners in their area? Like if they wanted someone to hold on to their guns for a bit, like what can people do?
They can support Hold My Guns, Charlie. We want to grow. They can
obviously.
Yes. There are options. And one thing that I really want to point out is that we have a personal safety plan that you can download also in the our link tree in our bio on our social medias. And it's also in the community tab under documents on our website, holdmyguns.org. And I encourage everybody to have a personal safety plan. And what that does is if you are facing a moment where you might be in a time of crisis or you have things going on in your home and you need to think about, what would help to increase our safety and our situational awareness in our home, and what are we going to do with lethal means if things kind of go sideways in our home, and having a plan that's written down, it makes a difference. So even if you're not necessarily close to a Hold My Guns location, even having a plan to say, I am going to call my friend, here's the name of my friend, I'm going to ask if they can store firearms for me, or I'm going to, check out my local storage locker and see if they're available to store firearms in a more of a traditional storage setting. That can be an option for people. Or I'm going to put a gun lock on, or I'm going to disassemble my firearm with my buddy sitting next to me, and we're going to have accountability there. So having a personal safety plan empowers people to make good choices about firearms. That being said, you can always give a key to a friend if they're not interested in holding on to a firearm for you. And you can also take your firearms to your local FFL and they can ship them to one of our FFL locations. And just like if you were to be doing a transfer, like if you were to maybe purchase a firearm on the internet and they ship it to your FFL, they would be able to do the same thing back. So you would then go to your local FFL and say, hey, I'm initiating shipment back from one of the Hold My Guns partners. You can expect to see this firearm showing up here and let me know. And then you go do the transfer at your local FFL. So worst case scenario, you can always do something like that too, which, by the way, is a great plan for people who might be traveling for a while. And they just, want to have all their firearms at one location, and maybe they're moving back to another location. And that helps, they can transfer it back to their new home, to their local FFL that way too. So there's a lot of different options there.
I want to do some plugging here real quick. And I just to be absolutely clear, I'm going to put myself up on camera here. I was able to get and I'll try to get it centered in the camera here. I've got this prospectus for Hold My Guns right here for possible sponsor prospectus. I got that from Sarah when we were at Gun Rights Policy Conference. And I'm looking at page 9 of the prospectus. And one thing that stuck out to me, and I wanted to come back to it today while we were interviewing you, unlike a lot of organizations who I will not mention, where 30 to 40% of their budget is for fundraising. Your budget, what you have laid out here, your proposed budgets, you are setting aside only 5% of your budget is for fundraising. You're hoping to raise funds and you're spending some money on that, but that's not your major focus is fundraising. I don't see anywhere on here where I see a president or executive director salary. I don't know if you're doing what you do, Sarah, for free. But if you are getting paid, you're not getting paid enough to hit the percentages. So
I appreciate that. We do have administrative support on there on page 9. It's about 12%. But right now, because so our goal for, it is kind of sad. Our goal for 2023 was to raise $215,000, and I think that we've raised I want to say $23,000 for the year. And if you think about just even how much it takes to go to SHOT Show, even though we have a nonprofit discounted booth at SHOT Show, that really doesn't go very far. And so something that we have been relying on is just, again, those grassroots efforts. But if we could get some really key sponsors who care about this mission, they care about taking leadership to make sure that our community has this as a resource, we really want to help them to shine as well. So there's a lot of opportunities. And you're right, we do have a pretty modest budget. And at the same time, though, once we have those contracts in place, we can really scale. Eventually, it would be really nice to be able to do my work full time. That's certainly my heart, but I didn't want to make it such that, we're just asking for overhead like that. So it's a tough thing because it's something that I'm passionate about. And I kind of find time in the margins of my day, despite the fact that I'm a mom of 5 and also a range safety officer and really involved with our church and always involved with different community efforts like taking meals to people and things like that. So I would really love to do this full time. And in fact, at AmCon, it kind of came up like, all right, Sarah, I believe it was John Correa who was standing up there and just made it a point that I do my work voluntarily because I'm passionate about it, but it's something that everyone should in the community be aware of and consider supporting. So I appreciate John Correa. The first time I met him was at SHOT Show in 2020, and he actually put out a video saying this is the best idea at SHOT Show, and did a video. And I was like, oh my goodness, John Correa is asking for me to be interviewed by him. And that was like my first introduction to him, and I didn't know it, but he had kind of been following us online and learning about us. So it was really cool. And my husband Tom was with me that year, and at SHOT, and he's like, how do you know John Correa? I'm like, I don't know, but he just came up to me and said, I want to interview. I heard about Hold My Guns and I want to share this with the world. So I'm really appreciative. Active Self-Protection also, we have a great instructor training, and we have worked with them to provide suicide prevention training. I'm a suicide prevention instructor, and so we've been able to work with some of their cohorts. And we also do that for A Girl and a Gun, by the way. So it's really beautiful to see how we can share this message of hope in our community and equip our community, but at the same time, talk about Hold My Guns. So it's an interesting approach. It hasn't been one that has, been especially lucrative, Paul, but that's at least it's our heart to help people. So.
Well, my hope is that Gaston Glock is watching in Austria and decides that his American subsidiary needs to get involved, or some of the board members that are with Smith and Wesson, or have what have you. I'm hoping you find the sponsorship on the corporate side that can help this come along.
Thank you.
We are quickly running out of time. Actually, we're just a little bit overtime for the budget I had for the interview. Anything we should have gotten to, Sarah, that we have not yet gotten to?
I would love to see you guys at SHOT Show. We're at booth 41167 this year. That'll be a lot of fun. And I just want to encourage people that, if you're hearing about Hold My Guns for the first time and you're saying, oh, well, I don't need any storage. I have a firearm safe, or I have a plan in place. I'm really happy for you. A lot of people in our community don't have the option. And so we really want to be able to support one another and make sure that this option is available. So please consider that, just because it's not something that you need right now, that it doesn't mean other people don't need it. And it also doesn't mean that you might not have an event that's unexpected in the future, that you might need firearm storage, and to have this option. If you have a wonderful safe and your house burns down and all that's left is your safe, you might need a place to keep the firearms that were once in your home while you're trying to find temporary housing. And we do hear about situations like that. So just keep it in mind. If we have this option available, you never know when you're going to need it. And it is a wonderful way that our community can support one another in self-governance. I encourage everyone to check out holdmyguns.org and go to our socials, follow us there. It really makes a difference because we're shadow banned a lot because we talk about gun rights. So just keep that in mind. Anytime people share our stories online, it helps to increase our outreach. So thank you for doing that.
Very cool. We are out of time for the segment. I do need to get out of here so we can get to news. Sarah, thank you for coming in to join us. Everybody, stay tuned. We're going to be right back with our news segment, and we've got a bunch of it. We'll come back right after this.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong house raids.
Police! Search warrant!
No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
All right, we are back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast. Let's see here. Where am I at? There we go. News. I did go away from this week at least because I didn't. As I stated earlier, I kind of ran out of time getting prepared for the show today. There is no AI reading. A couple of people have said that please don't do that. So you get to put up with my and Rob and John and Charlie's poor reading. First story we got up, Rob, looks like you're claiming that one over in show notes. You want to tell us about Jews arming themselves?
I do. This starts as a quote. There's another order coming from Hamas to kill the Jews. I happen to be Jewish. I don't want to be killed. Close quote. That's a succinct explanation. The author was called Joshua, a doctor in Los Angeles, as to why he wanted his first gun ever last week. He's far from alone. New owners and trainers alike describe scenes of gun stores and safety classes suddenly full of Jewish Americans who are hoping to protect themselves and their families from the kind of slaughter that played out on October 7th when Hamas terrorists streamed over the border into Israel and ruthlessly slaughtered and kidnapped more than 1,600 men, women, and children. Quote, I was at a local gun store a couple of days ago where my wife was doing her firearms training test, and it was full, Joshua said. By the way, this is from the Reload, Stephen Gutowski's publication. There was a line outside of the store just to get in so that people could get their tests or buy firearms or practice on the range. And I would say that 90% of the people in line were Jewish and Israeli. He said the motivation for the line out the door was clear. We all know what happened in Israel. It was a horrific attack on civilians. It's the worst attack against Jews since the Holocaust. I never thought I'd say this, but it's almost worse than the Nazis. They buried the bodies and cremated the bodies. The Nazis tried to hide their atrocities. Hamas live streams them on social media. John, what do you think?
I think Hamas attacked Israel, and I am utterly appalled at the level of anti-Semitism coming out of U.S. leftist groups, U.S. leftist politicians, and universities of all places. And, you know, if someone says they want you dead, you need to believe them, and you need to protect yourself. And I'm gratified, though saddened, that many in the Jewish community are now listening to this and taking steps. I'm sad that they have to take these steps. I'm glad that they are taking the steps to protect themselves and their families and others in their community. Rob?
It must feel horrible to be in a society where people publicly say they want to hurt you and your family. The good news is we're a society that allows individual armed defense. You don't have to wait for the police to come and protect you. Welcome to Armed America. We're here to help you. There are 4 decades of armed citizen experience that you can draw from. We've been here before, just like you. This podcast has, what was it, Paul? Was it 104 episodes expressly for new gun owners? Go to YouTube. That's the welcome mat. Those are the stepping stones. You're not alone.
Yeah, I know Yehuda Reamer, who was on our show, 2 weeks ago, posted today that he had gotten a call or an email from Bloomberg News asking him to be interviewed about Jews and arming themselves. So the thought of it is getting around, and even Bloomberg is noticing.
Yeah. Rob, you were
Right.
mentioning the Guns 101 videos. There's
Right.
actually 96 of the Guns 101 videos. My goal when we did that was to get to 101. Never did get there, and at that time I was still driving truck for a living. So maybe in the fairly near future we'll crank out 5 more of them and make 101. So, Charlie, you started to say something.
Shockingly, I lost my train of thought.
Short train.
Right, it's got derailed easy. I was listening to the story with so many people that are quick to drop the hat and accuse people of racism or bigotry or sexism or misogyny. People getting on the anti-Semitic train. I hate saying it seems like it'd be pretty easy to do because everyone wants to pile on to something, but it's still not good. Like, we all know that calling someone a racist when there's no basis for that person being a racist, when there's no history of racism, somebody coming out and spewing some anti-Semitic stuff is just as ridiculous. They don't know what these people are like. They're it's very bigoted. That's all I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I am furiously working on something that Rob asked me to do, and here we go.
All right,
here we go.
Oh, good.
Let me throw this up. There we go. That is the.
Everybody, welcome to the next.
Oops. Don't want to run that so it doesn't make noise. But there's 96. If you go to the Guns 101 tab on YouTube, there's 96 of them up there with a lot of different trainers that joined us to do those, and even some trainers such as Masada Ayub helped us with those. John Correa, some other, a lot of really great trainers were in on that with us. I've forgotten how many of them there. Paul Carlson was in there. My memory isn't working so good, but and I wish I could just off the top of my head pull 3.5 years ago, when and this was right when COVID was starting to hit hard, and I happened to have time off from trucking because freight wasn't moving. But yeah, that was fun to do, and I think we made a difference.
Definitely. Definitely, because it was one of these things where you came out and you're like, hey, listen, they're mostly peaceful protests, only a little bit fiery, and people need to protect themselves because we're living in a dangerous world where these people are going over and putting buildings on fire and destroying businesses. So yeah, you need to be able to protect yourself, and here's a great way to do this. And I mean, there's obviously 96 videos, variety of topics from using handguns and rifles and shotguns. Oh my.
Yeah. Well, and we got a little bit into storage in there. We got a little bit into everything in there. It was what we did is we went to these trainers and we said, what do you think new gun owners should do? What do you think are the main points you would like to get across to new gun owners in 10 minutes? And we made a bunch of videos that way. So,
yeah, to kind of go back to the story here, I've seen some videos on Instagram this week of people, shockingly, people in Boston, right in front of the Boston Public Library, chanting that they want to kill Jewish people. And I've seen a couple in other places as well, besides the protest that was at the in the Capitol this past week.
But I want to, we had, I just lost light in here. I don't know what the heck happened, but I seem to be okay on the camera. We had Yehuda Reamer on the show, a week and a half ago, and we were delayed on Monday, and so had a show on Wednesday, and we had Yehuda Reamer on that show just after the attacks. And he's got a T-shirt that really strikes home for me, and that is that people with ARs don't get in cattle cars, and I'm going to order that darn T-shirt. Simply, look, short train of thought. The attacks like we had on September 11th, 2001 will never, ever, ever, ever happen again. 3 of the 4 succeeded. The 4th one didn't. And it only took an hour and a half for news to get to a plane in the air that had been hijacked in order for those people to take over that plane so it didn't take out its target. Never again will terrorists be able to use airplanes to attack us. The attacks that happen in the United States are going to be a lot like the attacks that happen in Israel. And they're going to be in anti-gun states where people are not allowed to have firearms wherever and however they choose. Are there going to be attacks in the United States? I'd almost guarantee it. You need to arm yourself no matter who you are, because I don't know, Rob, I think if I were in Israel and I dressed in local clothes, I could possibly pass for a Jewish person. Rob, I think you could. How does a Jewish person look other than I can't pick somebody's religion out by meeting them on the street without talking to them. You know, we're all potential victims.
Mm-hmm.
So, real big ramble for me there. Sorry. Let's see here.
On to Boston.
Yeah, let's Charlie. That's your neck of the woods, man.
Oh boy, is it ever. The Massachusetts House approved a sweeping gun bill Wednesday aimed at tightening firearms laws, cracking down on unregistered ghost guns, and strengthening the state's assault-style weapons ban. The bill, which passed on a 120 to 38 vote, would also prohibit individuals from carrying a gun into a person's home without their permission and require key gun components to be serialized and registered with the state. The 125-page bill, a priority for the Massachusetts House Speaker Ron Mariano, is in part a response to the 2022 U.S. Supreme Court ruling that the citizens have the right to carry a firearm in public for self-defense. The proposal would create new laws that bar firing guns at or near homes and outlaw carrying firearms while intoxicated. It also would prohibit carrying firearms in schools, polling places, and government buildings. The bill expands the state's ban on assault weapons by prohibiting new purchase of AR-15 style weapons. It also would ban someone from turning a legal firearm into an illegal automatic weapon. And the proposal includes an enhanced system to track firearms used in crimes to help curb the flow of illegal guns into the state. It would also modernize the existing firearm registration system while increasing the availability of firearm data for academic and policy use, lawmakers said. Massachusetts, which already has tough gun laws, had the lowest rate of gun deaths in the country at 3.4 deaths per 100,000 in 2021, compared to Mississippi, which had the highest at 33.9 deaths per 100,000 people. According to the most recent statistics listed on the website at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Oof. All right, so let's take a look at this. One of the things they're doing is they're coming up with a new term, assault-style weapons. I'm going to tell you what an assault-style weapon is. It's not just an AR. It's a Kel-Tec Sub 2000. All right, a foldable rifle that's kind of like a glorified handgun that shoots 9mm rounds. Sometimes they shoot 40 Smith and Wesson. We cannot discharge firearms within 500 feet of an occupied dwelling. Someone actually proposed expanding that. There's a town that did this today. They expanded, pushing that out to 1,500 feet. So you couldn't discharge a firearm within 1,500 feet of an occupied dwelling unless you have permission for that person. If you're carrying, we don't have a law in Massachusetts for carrying intoxicated, as in there's not a legal limit for carrying intoxicated. It's just you're drunk. I saw you drinking, and I see that you're carrying a gun. You have to prove you're not intoxicated. You already can't carry at schools, at polling places, and in government buildings. We've had assault weapon ban since 1994, and then we had another one in 1998. And when everything sunset in 2004, we still had the 1994 one. It's already illegal to turn a firearm that you have into something that's fully automatic. And the things that they want to register, and they want to put serial numbers in register magazines. That is one of the things, and then they want all the firearms to be registered. So not just ghost guns and the guns that you have, but let's say any of you guys, let's say you broke a mirror and you moved to Massachusetts, if you'd have to get a license in order to have the guns that you have. So you have your free state guns, you would have to register your free state guns with Massachusetts. So it's some of it seems to be redundant, as it's from the Department of Redundancy Department. Yeah.
Well, I certainly hope if I were to break a mirror and move to Massachusetts, I certainly hope they're ready to upgrade their computer systems, because they're going to need, and they may have to temporarily hire a full-time person or three to enter data. I just Rob,
Charlie,
go.
Go ahead. Charlie, I skimmed the bill, and after a while I just said another one. I see all these restrictions on my ability to defend myself. Lots of places where the government says, oh, we want you disarmed here. I looked through some of the Massachusetts laws, you know them better than I, and I couldn't find, with only the exceptions of courtrooms and jails, I couldn't find another place where the government said, we want you disarmed and we'll take responsibility for protecting you. The rest of it was, we want you disarmed and F you, you're on your own. Did I miss something?
No, you got it. They're not going to protect you. They're not going to take care of you. Remember when Tennessee did this a couple years ago, where they said, okay, if you're going to stop people from carrying in stores, then the store has to be responsible. So if there's a mass murder scene at a Home Depot, then the people whose family was affected by this, who lost their family members, they could turn around and sue Home Depot. Which to me sounds like a great idea, because if you're not letting me be responsible for myself, then you're not going to be responsible for me, and you obviously did not do that sufficiently. So we should sue the crap out of you. But yeah, it's you can't carry in schools, you can't carry in courthouses, you can't carry in secure airport areas. I think something that happened recently is the no guns. I swear to God, the no gun signs used to not have effect in Massachusetts, but now they do.
Great.
John, what do you're writing in show notes?
Yeah, I presume this is past both houses of the Massachusetts legislature, Charlie? Or
Nope.
only the House?
So only the House. So it had a bill number. It was 4420. That's what it was at the end of June. They wanted to pass it by the end of July. Then, thank God, there was a lot of pushback from the closet gun owners that we have here in Massachusetts, and people finally started to speak out about this. So they decided to stall it. On the Thursday before Columbus Day weekend, or Indigenous People weekend, they came out and gave it a new bill number. And then they had testimony on the Tuesday after Columbus Day. And they announced this 5 days before on Thursday. Then last Tuesday, they changed the bill. They gave it a new number. They put it in the House and Ways Committee, and they voted on it on Wednesday. So it's only passed the House. It hasn't passed the Senate. This event, I went to an event on Saturday, and some of the politicians were saying that even the anti-gun Democrats were mad about the way that that Mariano, Speaker Mariano, and Rep Day went about doing all of this. So they're not going to support the bill, thank God. So let's just hope there's enough of them that feel this is a bunch of crap.
And then I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that your Governor Maura Healey would sign the bill. Correct?
Oh my God, she's foaming at the mouth to sign the bill. Are you kidding me? I call her our AGG, our anti-gun governor.
Dana wants to know, is Massachusetts restricting carry on private property unless expressly permitted?
So I think the way it is now is if they have the no gun signs do have the force of law, right? But I think what the way this bill is proposed is if you are going someplace, if you're going to a private residence, you would have to, the homeowner would have to tell people that they will allow them to carry a gun in their house. So if I was going to go to some friend's house that's anti-gun, which would be shocking, but I go there, I would have to announce to them that I am carrying concealed and that I do have a gun on me, and then they could either say I could carry in their house or not. Telling people that you have a gun on you kind of defeats the whole concealed carry.
Yes.
Like, that seems completely ridiculous. I actually was telling some people over the weekend, I thought about doing the exact opposite. And it's very much like George Costanza. And I'm saying, hey, listen, I've got a pro-gun house. When you go over to my house, I'm going to give you a gun. I'm going to give you some ammunition. I'm going to give you a holster. Just make sure you leave it when before you head out, make sure you leave it here. Because if you're coming to my house, I want you to carry a gun, which of course, I say it humorously and in jest, but it's just as ridiculous for someone to say, oh, I don't want you to carry a gun in my house, or me to go to someone's house and say, oh, I just want you to know I'm carrying a gun in your house. It's none of their business.
Yeah. And plus you don't want to, doggone it, where did I leave that darn 50 AE? Oh, yeah, I think Tony got that. Did he give it back to me before he left?
Right.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and go on to our next one. The U.S. Supreme Court on Monday of last week ordered 2 internet sellers of gun parts to comply with the Biden administration's regulations aimed at blocking ghost guns. The Supreme Court voted 5-4 on Tuesday to allow the Biden administration's regulations on ghost guns to go into effect. Conservative Justices John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joined the 3 liberal justices in voting to uphold enforcement of the against ghost guns. The justices lifted the U.S. District Court Reed O'Connor's injunction, which barred enforcement of a 2022 federal regulation against Blackhawk manufacturing and defense distributed. The rule was issued by the BATFE to target ghost guns which can be made from kits at home. It bans build, buy, shoot kits that individuals can get online or at a store without a background check or the usual serial numbers required by the federal government. Kits can quickly be assembled into a working firearm. Pause. They can be assembled into a working firearm if you know what the heck you're doing, or if you've taken 4 or 5 attempts to figure out what you're doing wrong. Regulations change the definition of firearm under federal law to include unfinished parts, such as the frame of a handgun or the receiver of a long gun, so they can be tracked more easily. The requirement applies regardless of how the firearm was made, including ghost guns made from kits. Sellers under the rule must run background checks on purchases prior to a sale. John, you're up first in show notes, man. What do you think?
We talked about this last week. And as I said then, I pulled up the miscellaneous order and doesn't give anything about the number of the 5-4 vote or whatever. But all it does, and I think the media is going nuts on it, and all it did is saying, we're staying the injunction from Judge O'Connor because there's appeals of his rule already, and we are going to let it go through the system. So we are going to let it play out rather than having not what I would want to have happen, but we're going to let it play out. It's going to go to the Court of Appeals, and maybe if it loses in the Court of Appeals, the government, of course, will try to appeal, and whether or not the Supreme Court takes it then is up in the air. So this is not the end of things.
The legal landscape, John, is fascinating. I don't know if we're going to cover it in the next story, but you really have to stay on top of your game. For example, some of the rulings that Judge Benitez has done in Southern California actually have effects up in Washington state, not necessarily in court cases, but as in yes, right now. So follow John's blog. This stuff changes minute to minute.
A story like this, don't take what Fox News says or Bearing Arms says or anybody says. Go to the source, and it's just right there. On the 16th of October, it's listed as a miscellaneous order, Garland versus Blackstock. Just read it for yourself. I mean, it's not even a full page.
Let me get this comment in. Because of the 80% receiver rule, people on a small scale are thinking Amy Coney Barrett is a traitor to the 2A. Let's slowly find out what's going on, and don't assume until facts are shown. I would agree with that. And Amy Coney Barrett, despite her vote here, and again, as John said, this is just a vote to stay the injunction. This is not a vote against for or against the regulation itself. Let's hang on until we've got all of the facts in it and this goes through before we say Amy Coney Barrett can no longer be relied on, because I think long term she will absolutely be able to be relied on.
I would agree. I mean, in terms of nonviolent felons being allowed to possess a firearm, she is already the only case she had prior to Bruin when she was in the Court of Appeals. She objected to nonviolent felons being denied their Second Amendment rights. So that goes a little further, I would say.
All right. Do we want to go ahead and skip down to the Rochester, New York story?
Sure. A judge has found former Syracuse mayoral candidate Alphonso Davis guilty of criminal possession of a weapon in a sensitive location. He is scheduled to be sentenced on January 10th in Monroe County Court. Rochester police arrested Davis on September 27, 2022, for attempting to bring a loaded semi-automatic weapon on board a flight at the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport. That is a mouthful. At the security checkpoint. At the time, Davis claimed he had forgot that he had the gun in his arm sling when he was stopped by the TSA. Security agents said they caught Davis with a concealed 9mm handgun loaded with 14 rounds at the TSA checkpoint. The gun was concealed in a sling inches from the man's hand, according to the TSA spokesperson. After his arrest, Davis told CNY Central he just had shoulder surgery and was on medication that may have influenced his thought process when he seemingly forgot about the gun he placed in his sling. Davis is a Democrat. His wife is a city judge in Rochester. He ran for mayor and called the other candidate unqualified due to the candidate's criminal record. Paul?
Couple things. Number one, I hope that was in a holster inside his sling, although somehow I kind of doubt it. The other thing is, this is a perfect example of rules for thee, but not for me. And maybe a sign of somebody who's not too brilliant, simply because, look, I know, and I knew before I started carrying on my body every day, this stuff, even one round, let alone a whole firearm, just one round is going to set off metal detectors in airports. I'm darn sure know a full firearm is going to be. You have to be a little bit dense in the head not to figure that out, or really, really, really on a lot of very good medication for that to slip your mind.
Paul, that's where I am. That's where my brain went. You know me, it's like, man, show me the toxicology report. What was this guy on? And this is the first case I can think of where his lawyer is going, oh, please let you be so stoned that I can claim you did not know up from down, because this was Class A stupid. Charlie.
Continuing with the rules for thee and not for me. A 14-round magazine in New York State. Didn't they ban 14-round magazines a couple years ago?
And believe me,
yes,
they would love to ban 14-year-old magazines too.
Well,
It's
see,
called
in
the
my
New York
state,
Safe Act.
exactly. In my
to
state,
keep
we can
Charlie
have
away from 14-year-old magazines.
right. 14 years old. A 14-year-old magazine is not old enough for me to have one that is
Right.
considered to be legal in Massachusetts. I've got to have some that are
Exactly.
29 years old now. I have to have a 29-year-old magazine in order for it to have more than 10 rounds. And pretty soon it's going to be just, high-cap magazines are going to be curio and relic items.
Yeah, and luckily I know a guy that just got a curio and relic license.
Nice.
So, Warsaw Patriot says, Rochester, New York, it's a crime in New York if you're even showing a firearm in public. That includes when you're giving it to TSA to the desk for air travel. I'm not familiar with New York law. Yeah, how do you get your firearm if you're going to be traveling with a firearm? If it's illegal to show it, you can't show it to TSA. Yeah, okay. And this is a good one. Dana says, sounds like the next John Fetterman. Send that man to Washington.
Washington. Ooh, Dana.
Nice.
Oh, wow. Charlie, why don't you go ahead and take the next one? Then I think we're going to set news aside and move on to DGUs.
All right. Judge Roger Benitez ruled that California's ammunition capacity ban was unconstitutional. A panel of judges who got it wrong before overturned the judge's stay. This is the same panel of the Ninth Circuit judges who had their ruling overturned and remanded by the U.S. Supreme Court. They doubled down and told the U.S. Supreme Court that it would take an explicit court ruling to make them obey the law. Now, Judge Benitez ruled that the California assault weapon ban is also unconstitutional, except the California Attorney General to appeal. Expect the Attorney General of California to appeal it to the Ninth Circuit and to ask for an immediate review by all of the circuit judges. This is a select panel that ruled in favor of the state before.
I'm gonna jump in here first. Do not rule out SCOTUS picking this thing up, the Supreme Court picking this thing up and slapping the Ninth Circuit down this session. It's not likely, but it could happen, and I do expect it more in November 2020, or that oral arguments will come up in the October-November time frame 2024, right around the time we're having a presidential election. The way the Supreme Court works, it takes a certain amount of cases every year, and they get to choose which ones they take. I would expect that this is going to take a little while to roll through, and by the time the Ninth Circuit gets done with what they're going to do with it, it'll be around the 2024 time frame for the Supreme Court to be choosing their cases, and I would expect places like SAF, Firearms Policy Coalition, and NRA, GOA, and others to be immediately issuing the appeal when the Ninth Circuit rules against us, which I very much believe they will.
Oh, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm looking at legislatures coast to coast in the Seven Ugly Sisters, and these legislatures are basically saying, fine, do whatever you want. Overturn that law. We'll pass it again. We're going to flood the system with what we clearly expect are unconstitutional laws because the U.S. Supreme Court overturns or has to turn away 99% of the submitted cases. Even doing that, it takes years. They're just going to fringe all they want because the U.S. Supreme Court will never get to them. And as near as I can tell, the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't have the courage to impose a special master who would take on Second Amendment cases. There is a precedent for that. That's what we had to do after school desegregation. We had to impose special masters who said, tell you what, Mississippi, you're having a problem with schooling. Here's the guy who will interpret court orders. He now governs schooling in your state. John?
Well, it takes more than years. It takes money. Every time you have to file another case, it's thousands of dollars down the tube. And California or any governmental entity has unlimited funds to do this because they're just using our money against us in tax money. So they were like, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll do it again. And they're doing it really in the hope that we can't afford to challenge it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. And my hope is that there is enough of people like the four of us that belong to enough places that the challenges do still go on. And thousands of dollars, as John said, that's small potatoes. Last I heard, it took $2 million to get a case to the Supreme Court, a very cheap case, up to the level of the Supreme Court, and then probably a couple $3 million to get it through the Supreme Court. If you think you bought a $15 1 year membership to SAF and that covers you, well, thank you, and that does help. But if you've got another $50 in your pocket that you can spare, slip it to SAF, slip it to GOA, slip it to Firearms Policy Coalition. This is a continuous fight, and it takes continuous and huge amounts of money.
Yeah, I mean, what we need is a pro-gun billionaire on our side.
And
go ahead, Charlie.
Every time the lottery goes from 1.2 billion down to 20 million, I'm like, all right, now I'm going to play. Now I got a better chance of winning. And who would I give my money to?
It's exactly right. Even if it was 1.5 billion that I won, I always said that I would take the bulk of the money and start, a non-profit foundation to support these cases, to support gun rights, among other things, but conservative causes, but really gun rights. Save some of the money so I can also give money personally to candidates who support gun rights.
I'm going to tell you what, whoever is running against AOC in New York, should I win the $1.5 billion, is going to have a very well-funded campaign. Now, because of election laws, I can't donate. I think it's about $2,000 per election cycle, $2,000 and change I can donate per election cycle. However, I can form a political action committee. The Paul Lathrop, I'm sick of this stuff, political action committee, and that committee can spend unlimited amounts of money for whoever's running against her, or that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Remember the guy that was running for office on the Rent's Too Damn High campaign?
Yes.
The Rent's Too Damn High party? Yeah.
All right. Let's go ahead and let's step aside to break. And as we have been doing lately, I'm making an executive decision. We're going to combine our because we're already at 90 minutes. we're going to combine our last two segments into one segment. We're going to do DGUs and our media segment in one shot. We hope to get out of here in about 25 to 30 minutes, but we're going to take our last break. We'll be right back right after this.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong-house raids.
Police! Search warrant! No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
All right, we are back. This is the final segment of the Polite Society podcast tonight. This is our DGU segment. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information and education, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Sooner or later, I'm going to learn not to take a drink of soda on break so I don't have these burps coming up as I'm trying to speak. John, you've got our first one out of Missouri.
Yeah, it's from Bellefontaine neighbors. Just before 9:30 a.m., a couple pulled up to their home after dropping their child off at school. The woman ran into the home and left the driver's door of the car open. The man was sitting in the back seat. While she ran into a home, a juvenile jumped out of a car that had followed them and hopped into the driver's seat. The man, sitting in the back seat, pulled a firearm and shot the attempted carjacker. The carjacker jumped back out of the car and ran back to the car in which he came. Police believe that others in the suspect's car then fired shots at the victim's car. According to Major Tim Sanders, there's been an epidemic of carjackings and armed confrontations in the area recently. According to Sanders, despite the strain of vacancies in the department, they have the suspect. The suspect is recovering from his wounds, and the male victim is also recovering after he got shot in the elbow. And I just wanted to add in that Bellefontaine Neighbors is an inner suburb of St. Louis in North County, which North County has a higher than average crime rate. Whatever's in St. Louis City is moving, crossing the border, shall we say.
I'm
muted, sorry. Go, John, or go, Rob.
When I went and looked at the videos, this looked like it was a pretty nice neighborhood. And what I suspect happened is a bunch of thugs went, the rich people drive their kids to school. This is a lineup of cars we can steal every morning. Let's go park at the end of the street and watch the nice SUVs go by and get us some.
And going to John's point, saying the north side of St. Louis has a higher than average crime rate is a little bit like saying Custer had a little bit higher than expected resistance when he had his incident at Little Bighorn. So, anyway, the thing I wanted to bring up about this one is lady jumps, she's in her driveway, jumps out of her car, leaves car door open, runs into house, and is expecting just to be back out in a second. Kid pulls up in car, a passenger in a car, jumps out as a passenger in the car, goes to jump in the driver's seat and drive away. How much you want to bet kid didn't even check back seat to see if dad was back there with kids? All of a sudden, whoops, as John Correa would say, fibs, fudge, I've been shot, and starts retreating. I don't know that the guy was not expecting kids, but he certainly wasn't expecting adult in the back seat.
Yeah.
An armed adult in the back seat.
Yes.
Yes.
Missouri is a permitless carry state, if I believe so, correct?
Yes. Missouri is permitless carry.
All right.
And the city of St. Louis hates that. The politicians, I should say, in the city of St. Louis hate that.
And the criminals
Shocking.
aren't too very fond of it either, I'm imagining.
Right.
No.
Well, the
right.
criminals can get on the same side as the criminals.
Well, it's hard to it's sometimes hard to distinguish between the two anyway. Let's go to Morehead City, North Carolina. Of course, Morehead City. At first, I think Morehead City, Minnesota, when I hear Morehead City, but this is Morehead City, North Carolina, and I just Google mapped, searched that thing. That's about as far from John as you can get in North Carolina and still be in the state.
It's the South Outer Banks. Yeah.
Yeah. Shortly after 3 p.m., Morehead City police responded to a call of shots fired. A 55-year-old had forced his way into a home, and he was armed. The homeowner was also armed and shot the intruder. The intruder left the scene, but not after stealing the resident's vehicle. Officers conducted a traffic stop on the vehicle at the intersection of Highway 70 and South 35th Street. It was adjacent to the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries. The responding officers advised the fisheries building be placed on lockdown. The suspect was taken into custody without further incident, and Morehead City Fire EMS started medical care. He's now in the hospital at ECU Hospital. Once released from the hospital, he faces charges of breaking and entering to terrorize, larceny of a motor vehicle, and domestic criminal trespass. He's also facing charges of, big shock, violating the conditions of his probation. And the homeowner, by the way, is not facing any charges. Not a lot to go on this one other than the guy was armed when he breaks in. Homeowner says, yeah, not today, and returns shots. I don't know. John, you're up in show notes.
Yeah, in North Carolina, it is presumed that if you're breaking into a house and you're armed, that the homeowner is always allowed to respond with deadly force because it's a life or death situation. More importantly, the guy who's in the hospital cannot sue the homeowner for his medical bills in a civil suit. He's precluded from a civil suit because he was the criminal. They cannot sue.
That's excellent news.
Under our castle doctrine.
I want to get this one up. Cool. Warsaw Patriot says, speaking of our last one, you mess with a dad or mom with their children, you've crossed the line now, boy. That's the old mama bear thing. Yeah, or papa bear, as this case, that previous story's case was. Yeah, don't. If you're going to be messing around and the children are involved, the guy should just be lucky it was only a shot, not a fatal one. Let's see here. Where are we at? Rob, let's go to your old stomping grounds of California, man.
Well, I was not exactly a frequent flyer in Manhattan Beach, California. That's pretty rarefied atmosphere. But we have all seen the videos of the smash and grab robberies. They're pretty common on the right coast and the left coast. Take yourself to 12:30 p.m., half-hour afternoon, on a Saturday. And that's what happened at Prestige Jewelers in Manhattan Beach, California. Of course, the store had video cameras inside the store, in front of the store. So it's all caught in 4K and on a hard drive. Several employees were helping a couple when 5 suspects came into the store. You can see a 6th person outside in the getaway car. And these guys are done in immaculate California Manhattan Beach attire, including hoodies, face masks, gloves, and hammers. The robbers entered the store and immediately started smashing the glass cases and grabbing the merchandise. Within seconds, an employee pulls a gun and fires 1 round at the thieves. Evidently, that was the start of a race for the front door. The thieves immediately dove back into the vehicle, and boom, they're gone. Unfortunately, the inside and outside vehicle videos did not get good enough shots, although I think they did make one arrest. John, what do you think?
I'm just going to say, do you want to make a guess that these are part of some street gang that was trying to find financial support for their, for activities for youth?
Right.
As Rob was reading this, what's running through my head is a image of a reverse clown car. Instead of person after person piling out of a car, I see just people diving in and keep diving into a car to get the heck away from there.
Paul, I'm seeing that too, except I'm thinking, unless these guys literally dove through the front glass window, that front door was a bottleneck. How did the employee miss?
It's California, man. Lack of training.
You think?
Could be.
Yeah. I'm thinking it's so hard to get training in California simply because they don't want you to have a firearm, period. Oh my God, you want to get good with the thing?
Paul, there are ranges. I've been to them in the LA basin. I've got to say, this man thought the gun was a magic talisman and didn't plan to have the expertise to use it. John, Charlie, you want to disagree?
I don't disagree. I'm just wondering, well, in places where it's hard to get a carry permit, traditionally jewelers do not have a hard time getting carry permits. Just because of the cost of their merchandise. I'm wondering if it wasn't bad marksmanship rather than he did a warning shot. He aimed high, not looking to hit, but to scare. Not that that's a good idea. I'm just thinking that might have been what he did.
Right.
Or she did.
Yeah. Charlie, that's a great point. You got to show notes. Go with it, bud.
Yeah, just because you own a gun doesn't make you a two-way advocate. Just because you own a gun doesn't mean you're into the armed lifestyle. It doesn't mean you're into training. It just means you have a gun. So it very well could be likely that since he owns a jewelry store, he said, well, if I have a gun, I'll be okay, and not know how to use it, not know how to be proficient with it, not be trained, not be educated.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I covered this story, there was a recent smash and grab, I think within the last couple of years, at a local mall. And those thieves took a haul, like $500,000, which is, I suspect, why this man was carrying. Now, Paul, I want to touch on your point. Could the owner of the jewelry store get a carry permit? Easily. Could the employee? Probably not, but he could carry on the premises with the permission of the owner.
Well, and one thing, since we're talking about a jewelry store, I do not believe, but no, I don't. I'm just going to say it right now. I don't have the sound effect transferred over to the new computer yet. That'll happen soon. But Masada Ayub, when his introduction to firearms is, I believe it was his father owned a jewelry store in the Northeast.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know what? If you're dealing with, if you are a owner of a jewelry store, if you deal with high end anything, I very much believe when you're at work, you should be able to protect yourself. And if you live in the state of Texas, you may be able to protect your property too. But yeah. All right, let's do this, guys. Rather than going to break, as I said earlier, we're gonna move on. And Rob, what's been going on this week over at Slowfax, man?
Terrorists attacked innocent victims in Israel. This is a war of ethnic cleansing. Hamas and their Iranian enablers wanted other nations to hold them in awe. Here in the United States, there are things we can learn from both the Israeli civilians and from the Israeli government. We will be the first responders during an emergency. Police and the military show up much, much later. Also, the more you study, train, and prepare, the luckier you get. As a new gun owner in the U.S., then there are centuries of civilian gun ownership from which you can draw. What we should learn from the attack on Israel is the name of my post at slowfacts.wordpress.com. There's also an hour-long discussion with Ben Branam on his podcast, Modern Self-Protection. John, tell me about No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money.
Well, unlike you, Rob, it was a slow week of blogging for me. And it really wasn't from the lack of news, it was just I wasn't feeling it this week. I did have a couple of posts up recognizing International Gin and Tonic Day along with National Ruger Day. And all I'm going to say is please do not handle your Ruger after you've been drinking gin and tonics.
You can do, however, the opposite. Get it, handle your Ruger,
yes.
then go celebrate with some gin and tonic.
Correct. That and more at onlygunsandmoney.com. Charlie?
I have to say, John, I think I shared the gin and tonic day post with one of my friends who enjoys gin and tonic. So that was pretty funny. Tomorrow I have a show, Riding Shotgun with Charlie, coming out with Jim Shepard as my guest. Jim is the publisher of the Outdoor Wire and all of the other wires, the shooting wire, the hunting wire, the archery wire, the fishing wire, the air gun wire. He's quite an interesting guy with a lot of crazy and wild stories. He used to work his badge number 7 when he worked at CNN back in 1980, where he was an anchor, and he's got a lot of crazy stories. He was making a commercial with Tiger Woods in Florida. When Tiger asked him, he says, "Hey, I know you're into guns. Are you going to the gun show?" And so Jim was like, "What gun show?" And he found out it was the SHOT Show. So he got a media badge and went to SHOT Show, and that's how we started the Outdoor Wire. So that's going to be coming out tomorrow. And I usually do not let the cat out of the bag about my upcoming Writing Shotgun with Charlie articles, but the subject of the Armed Lifestyle, which is going to drop sometime in November, is Sarah Joy Albrect. So I thought it was great to have her on, and she is going to be, she's going to be the person that I focus my article on next month.
Very cool.
Perfect.
Yeah, timing is everything.
All right. Well, I do want to remind everybody, do please go join. If you're a member of Facebook, go to facebook.com/ and search for Polite Society Podcast Listeners. We've got our own group there. I get in there from time to time, not as much as I should, but I do get in there. We post a lot of our stories there, and a lot of our listeners post stuff they find interesting there as well. It is a moderated group, so we don't let just anybody in. You're not going to find any trolls there. And if they do happen to get in, they're not going to last long. That's it. That's the Polite Society Podcast Listeners Group on Facebook. That does wrap up another episode of the Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank Sarah Albrect for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, Carrie Ann, and Rob,
until next time,
stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.